Hi everyone, Mark here, Planning Account Director at Equimedia, bringing you the fifth and final session in our Digital Futures Now series. In this session, there'll be a focus on building your brand, growing trust, and achieving your goals through social media platforms. You'll hear from Beth, our social media manager at Equimedia, who will deep dive into how we can use different social media platforms to grow trust within our consumer bases. Beth will also explore how she sees the landscape changing through social media through the rest of the 2020s and beyond. We hope you enjoy the session. As always, feel free to use the hashtag Digital Futures Now on Twitter and join the conversation with us.
Hi, I'm Beth, the social media manager here at Equimedia, and today I'm going to be talking to you about organic social in the new Roaring Twenties. So a little bit of background information about me. I joined Equimedia in 2019 following 2 years with a non-profit charity where I was working in the digital marketing team. Within that job, I really honed in my skills within the social media world, and when I joined Equimedia, was part of the content and social media team and have since become the social media manager. So I look after organic social here, and that is what I'm going to be talking to you about today: how to grow your following, how to grow your engagement, how to grow your community, but ultimately how to grow your trust with your organic social media. Throughout this video, I'm going to be covering 4 different topics and going into detail about each one. These are things that I have dug out through my years of working within social media, through my research for clients, and generally what I think are things we can explore when we look at how this next decade is going to be influenced by what is becoming an overwhelming growth of social media presence everywhere. The first topic we're going to be talking about is how social media plays a role in our lives in 2021. Social media, as I have said, is everywhere. You cannot look somewhere without seeing a little social icon on the bottom of a leaflet in a shop door when you're literally looking through your phone. It is there, it is everywhere, and it is very present. So it's absolutely something that is very beneficial for you to get on board with your brand and just make sure you're building up something that is part of this movement and you're not getting left behind, because this is just going to keep growing. We see new apps popping up all the time, new platforms such as Clubhouse has come up recently, which is a very much audio-based social media platform. Things like this are happening, so we are certainly seeing changes and evergreen growth within the social media world. So we don't want you guys to get left behind, and hopefully that's what we can help you with here. But generally, when we look at social media, we are seeing it as a cause of many different things, but it is a massive source of where we go and get our news on a really regular basis. Now, I don't know about you, but when something big has happened, I check social media, I check Twitter. If it is trending on Twitter, I know it is big news. If people are talking about it on my timeline, I can see a different insight to what I could see if I looked on a news platform. This is where everyone has the potential to be a journalist. Whether or not that's a good or a bad thing is very much up to you. But the possibility is there for people to be able to share their views and their opinions and to make things trend. When something trends on Twitter, it's because it has got a lot of people talking about it, so much so that a specific hashtag or word phrasing has popped into the trending topics on your Twitter timeline. This is very much an indication that something is big news, and it might not be directly related to the headline you would see on a news article, but you can bet there's somewhere linked along the way. What makes this really tricky here when we're talking about how brands can use social media is making sure you can be trusted out of all of this web of information. Depending on what you're going to be offering on your social media and what you as a business offer your audience or your clients or your customers, very much depends on how you will use these platforms. But if you are using this in any way to give out any form of information in which you have the authority on or you have the specialisms within, you need to make sure that you are really making your brand stand out as trustworthy here, because with so much news doesn't necessarily come a whole bunch of truth. We've heard the term fake news being regenerated over the last few years, and that's because it's become a very real thing. Social media can spread something so easily that we no longer know what is true and what is fabricated. So what is really important is that you build a brand that represents what you are specialists in and that comes across on your social media, so that when something happens that might be relevant to what your brand specializes in, people can go to your account and they can know that what you're saying is going to be trustworthy. Over the last year, we have seen a very different type of environment environment socially. And social media has been very much at the heart of that. Not only do people use social media to get the news and updates, but they also use it to get social interactions and to build communities. That is a huge part of what's been happening over the past year with lockdown. People are just communicating on social media, people are making new friends, people are finding relationships, they're finding communities, they're finding their spaces where their interests are no longer niche, they are huge communities online. And if your brand can tap into those communities and can make genuine connections, that is going to be a real way for you to seem as genuine as possible and as trustworthy as possible, because you will be getting on the side of all of these people that really, really care about specific topics. You would be surprised by how many individual breakdowns of different communities we can see on social media. There are so many different niches that are so filled with active users having conversations, and there's so many different types of them that it's just amazing that there's all these different interests coming together. But this is really something that we have seen flourish in the past year. As events have gone online as well, we can just see that these communities are popping up. So I think it would be really, really valuable to utilize that within your social media. And if you can find a community that's relevant to your brand, then definitely hone in on that and make genuine interactions and genuine connections. I say the word genuine a lot because if it is just connections for the sake of connections, they are not going to come across in the way that you want them to the people that you are trying to reach out to. So if you are looking at the content they're producing and you are commenting specifically on that, that will come across a lot stronger and hopefully get you that more genuine engagement. Social media as well over the past year has seen a massive eruption of us being able to support movements and causes that we care about. We can see this in things such as Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. These are huge things that have been made even bigger by social media and how brands and general users can get involved with this. This is very much something that a lot of people are talking about and a lot of people want to know a stance. I think using social media in this way is amazing because it is a way we can all unite people together to support massive things. And if your brand has a charity that you support or a cause that you often look to, this is a great way to showcase that, because not only does it give you a brilliant reputation for being a brand that cares, but it also gets you involved in that conversation and gets you put right at the top of that engagement and gets you that interaction to show your customers that you are a brand to be absolutely trusted. Users will feel much more inclined to follow you and talk to you online if you are a brand talking about things they genuinely care about. Whatever you're using your social media for, whatever you're promoting with it, there is always a space to talk about the more human issues. I guarantee you these humanized posts that are more related to current issues will do really well, because this is what people want to see. And absolutely, this will encourage followers to know what you support, know what you believe in, and know that you share values with them. And that sharing of the value is what will hopefully get you that really genuine engagement, but also that trustworthy connection with each individual follower. Next, we're going to be talking about how you can use social media to build consumer trust within your brand. Social media is a place for conversation, and the best kind of conversations are one where people are actively involved, giving genuine responses. Encouraging two-way conversation with your social posts is a fantastic way to get your users involved, whether you're asking them questions, getting them to vote on things. If you are getting that conversation in the comments of your Facebook status, in your Instagram, on your tweets, your LinkedIn, anywhere you post, if you are encouraging conversation, you are not only getting that great engagement from your customers, from your clients, your consumers, but you are also encouraging the algorithms to favour your posts and see that they're responding really well because you have got genuine comments. You could have 50,000 likes and 5 comments, but if those 5 comments are genuine customers, they will be infinitely more valuable to you than 50,000 likes from people that might have just liked your post for the sake of it as it scrolled past their feed. Social media is very much becoming the form of communication. If you want to reach out to a brand, it is much more common for people to go and search them on social media first than looking for an email address to contact them. So you have to be available to have that conversation within your social platform. I've mentioned getting your customers involved by commenting and asking them questions and getting them to take part in polls, but if you give them some sort of decision-making ability, whether it is a poll, so you're going with the most popular option, or whether it's individual hashtag voting, these kind of things are a really good way to make your customers feel like they are part of the conversation and they are actually making a difference to your brand. Innocent Smoothies is an account that does this really well. They get their customers involved, they ask them questions, they get them to make decisions, they get them to vote on things, and that is a way that they keep their customers coming back and are recognised as a really individual social media brand. It could be seen as taking risks, some of the things that they do, but often you can find that those do reward the best results. Another option that I know won't be for everyone, but is a really, really good one if you are able to utilize it, is live streaming. Lots of different social media platforms offer this now, and it's in various different formats with different time limits, different restrictions, and different features. But if you can tap into this market, this is going to be amazing for the way that you can engage with your customers. You will get live engagement, you will get live questions, and whilst there are risks attached to this in the fact that you are going to be having to monitor these live and there's not going to be anyone there giving you the set responses, you are able to have that really instant connection with who you're talking to, and you're able to show a much more human side, because this is going to involve multiple members or one member of staff being in front of the camera, which is going to get that human connection and just show there are people behind the brand, which is so important to project in a world where we're running into AI automations and everything is digital. We want to remind people that there are still people behind the social media channels. And finally, when it comes to building that consumer trust, I've mentioned standing up for movements and causes that you care about, but doing these with a human voice will really create that brand trust with your consumers. Standing up for the causes you care about, but using a personal voice behind them, will show that you are not just there to get clicks, you're not just there to get call to actions. The purpose of social media is to build this community, and ultimately, if your content is just there to drive traffic to your website, you aren't doing it correctly. You need to have a good mix of those personal posts. As I've said, the human-based personal content will do infinitely better than the call to action posts, because people are on social media to have that interaction. People are on social media as people scrolling through a feed. So the best posts to connect with them are going to be the more personal connection posts, rather than just the ones with a call to action link. But the benefit to this is the more content you put out there that is human-based, people-based, behind the scenes content, the better that does, the better your other posts will do as a reflection, because your social media account will be viewed in the eyes of the algorithm as a successful, good account. Therefore, your posts will be promoted within that line of thought. Off the back of that, there are 3 things that I would say to not do if you are trying to build brand trust within your social media accounts. The first one, which is the massive no-no, is to never ever delete comments that are negative. If you have got inappropriate comments that violate any guidelines, absolutely delete those. There are always going to be trolls posting links that they shouldn't be posting. But if you have someone disagreeing with your brand or presenting a negative thought, don't delete this, because this very much shows that you're okay with silencing voices and that you only want to see the positive. But part of social media is being able to accept the negative. Whether or not you choose to respond to that and how you do so is completely up to you, your brand and your brand guidelines within social media, but I would never advise deleting anything negative, because it just doesn't reflect well on the brand. In line with that, never lie about your brand online. Don't make anything up or hyperbolize anything to make it seem more than it is, because this can always come back and bite you later. And finally, as I've already mentioned, make sure not to make everything call to action based, because this will just come across like you are just there to funnel people to your website, and that isn't the purpose of social media. Also, posts that have a link to another site are removing you from that social media site, which the social media site doesn't want to do. So it's more inclined to keep you on the site and to boost your posts within its algorithm if you're not just constantly sharing links to take you away to another website. In what we're naming the new Roaring 20s, we are seeing a massive rise in influencer marketing. You may have seen this happening around you, you may already be utilizing it, but what really is influencer marketing, and how can it help you build trust with your consumers? Influencer marketing is working in tandem with people with larger social media followings. This can be anything from a smaller following of a couple of thousand up to millions. It depends what your budgets are, who you are as a brand, and who you want to work with. There are so many different people out there within so many different niches. Again, you'd probably be surprised to research exactly where people stand out and what niches they talk about within their social media channels. Brands come up with influencers in so many different ways, but the absolute best rule of thumb when looking for an influencer is to find one relevant to your industry. Really research through keywords and hashtags. Find the influencer on the platform you want that you think would give you a really great partnership and that would really represent your brand in the way that you hope it to be represented. Of course, when it does come to influencer marketing, you are giving the power over to the influencer, and usually if you are paying for that content, you will have the ability to be able to view it and review it. This is something you can really easily ask for. If you build a good working relationship with the influencer, they're much more likely to be going back and forth, checking things with you over email, checking you're happy, and hopefully would never post anything out you weren't happy with. But getting that relationship with them is really key to having the content that you want out there, because obviously they're going to put their spin on it and they're going to create the content that suits their audience, but you just want to make sure your message is put through correctly there as well. And that'll be involved if you were to write contracts to work with influencers, just to make sure there's certain things being mentioned and certain things that you don't want to be mentioned at all. You want to work with quality over quantity when it comes to influencers. Quality influencers might not necessarily have millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers, but they may have a smaller, more dedicated audience. These are micro/macro influencers, and these influencers will be able to help you really hone in what you're looking for, because their audience are going to be a lot more niche and a lot more dedicated. That is, if you've managed to find an influencer that really is within your brand and what you want to represent. If you are looking for someone that has a lot more of a wider reach, you are going to run the risk that that audience isn't going to be quite as niche and might not be quite as interested in the way that a niche audience would be. But again, this is very much something you need to kind of find your feet with and work out what works for you and what works for your brand. Ultimately, you've obviously got to work with an influencer who is honest and truthful, and hopefully this is something you can see in the other ads they run. Definitely do your research when picking an influencer, but really influencer marketing can make such a difference because it gets that personal connection, but it also gives you a different avenue to go down with your marketing and reach a different audience, because your audience are already following you, they're there. You can reach a further audience obviously when you do paid content, but by working with an influencer, you're potentially bringing yourself over all these new followers. Influencer marketing can be so valuable, and I really would recommend looking into it. When I'm not working at Equimedia, I'm actually running my own influencer social media accounts where I've got a collective following of just over 65k. I've been doing this since 2016 and have won several awards over this time. So I work with brands on the other end of things as an influencer, and I can see the impact that this kind of engagement has for them and how being an influencer can help in a very different way and how I can utilize that audience. And it's really interesting to be able to see both sides of the relationship, both from working at Equimedia and also running my influencer accounts outside of work. But ultimately, after all of this I've just said, we are just at the beginning of the new Roaring 20s. So where do we see social media heading as we go into this new decade? I think it's no surprise that we predict that video content is going to continue to be huge. When we see sites such as TikTok and Instagram really launching into this as a platform, it's no surprise really that we think this is going to be a massive thing as we go further into the 20s. Video is so easy to get hold of, it's quick, you can do it on your phone, you can do it through a professional agency if you would like to get something a little bit more bespoke. There's so many different things you can do to create video, but ultimately there's so many platforms now that are enabling you to be able to make that content yourself, or go to an agency to do it for you and just generally excel with what you're promoting online through video content as well as imagery. And I think acknowledging this now and kind of jumping ahead of it now and getting really familiar with how to do this in a way that works for your brand is going to really reflect well and just be more engaging and more visually stimulating for your audience. I don't think there's going to be any change in us seeing social media as a news outlet. It is going to become more and more popular for us to get our news from social media. We see sites banning fake news too, so it really is becoming important to be trustworthy and to present that information in a really reliable way. So we think definitely jump ahead of this and make sure that your brand is somewhere to be trusted, but also somewhere to get that up-to-date news on whatever it is that you are promoting with your social channels. Unfortunately, with the rise in social media comes a decrease in our attention spans. The more time we spend on our phones with content that we can just scroll past if we get bored of it, we are going to see a massive reduction in attention spans, which is why it's really important when you're creating your content to create something that is instantly engaging, instantly going to pull someone in. And that is how video content, for example, can be something that does really well. But this is going to be in whatever format you've seen, you've tried and tested and has worked really well. Don't be afraid to play about with things, but you've got to try and capture your audience first. Whether that's putting URL very much near the top of your post above the fold, whether that's using a really bold font that grabs someone with a graphic, whatever you found works for you, just roll with that, because ultimately you have to grab their attention before someone scrolls past. This could also involve using longer size images because they take up more space on the page, for example. This is all stuff that we're able to help with as well. This is what we can create calendars to be able to hopefully hone in the audience and really target what they need when they need it so they don't scroll off and go somewhere else. I hope this is something you found really interesting. Thank you so much for listening. If you do have any questions, please do submit them so we can discuss them later on in the week. But thank you so very much for watching. Please do reach out if you would like to get in touch with help with anything I've said in this video.
We hope you've come out of the session knowing a bit more, but please do share any questions that you have with us using the Q&A speech bubble underneath the timeline bar below, and we'll plan on answering as many of the questions we can on our live roundtable at the end of the week. And of course, continue to join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #DigitalFuturesNow. Thanks, guys.